The process of making carbohydrates is called photosynthesis, and this is something that we will have specialized cells or special organisms that are able to perform. This process is going to actually make carbohydrates utilizing the energy in the sun, so utilizing light energy. It has a special organelle where it does happen or does occur. This is called the chloroplast. And the chloroplast has some special structures inside of it, which you can see in this picture are little green discs. The little green discs themselves are called thylakoids, and when we stack them up, like you see here, we call that grana. The process of photosynthesis is going to have two main stages or two halves to it. The first half is the half that is going to use light, and that is what we call the light-dependent reactions. So in those reactions, they are going to be collecting energy from the sun and then taking that solar energy and turning it into a chemical form. The chemical form is going to be specifically ATP molecules. These reactions are going to take place inside of the grana or inside of the thylakoids. And through that process, a water molecule is going to be broken open. When we break open the water molecule, we will be producing oxygen that will go back to the atmosphere. And then we are getting the ATP. We will also be energizing some electrons, which are going to be held by an electron carrier called NADPH. The second stage, or the second half, is what we call the light-independent reactions. And that's because they don't specifically use light. However, they really do rely strongly on the products of the light reactions. So in the light-independent reactions, this is going to happen in the stroma of the chloroplast, which is just outside of those little green discs. And it is going to make the sugar from carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And we will utilize the ATP and the electrons in our electron carrier from the light reactions. If we look at the light reactions closer, these are going to involve collections of pigments, which are called photosystems. Photosystems are what we call light harvesting complexes because that describes exactly what they do. The light comes in, it hits a pigment, it is absorbed by that pigment, the energy is, and then that absorbed energy is going to be used to energize electrons, which we will use later, and ultimately it is going to be used to make some ATP as well. There are a couple different photosystems. We call it photosystem 2 and photosystem 1. I know that sounds backwards, but that's just the order that they function in, but they were named according to the order they were discovered in. But these are going to be really collecting the energy from the sun and energizing the electrons. So if we look at this process here, there's two pathways that electrons can take once they do come in. So notice that the light comes in and then electrons are going to get energized. Those energized electrons are going to be passed through a couple different participants. It's a very tiny electron transport chain. And since it's a really small electron transport chain, it will slowly release the energy from the electrons in a controlled fashion. And when they do that, they are going to create a hydrogen ion gradient or a concentration difference in the hydrogens, similar to what happened with the electron transport chain in cellular respiration. If we have that, then we can also get ATP synthesis using chemiosmosis and that fancy enzyme, the ATP synthase. So that's what we see happening over here. We've got our ATP synthase enzyme, which is going to allow the hydrogens to flow back through the membrane. And when they flow back through, that wheel spins. That's part of the enzyme itself, and we will have ATP produced. My ATP is being cut off in this picture, but the ATP would be right up here. That is a product of this type of light reaction. So this one's called cyclic photophosphorylation. The other type of light reaction that we have is non-cyclic. With the non-cyclic, it is a longer process. It's a little more complex. With this one, we do have light coming in and we have electrons that are getting that extra energy to them, and then the electrons get passed along through an electron transport chain. So that's this portion here in the middle. That's the electron transport chain, which is going to create a hydrogen ion difference. If we have the hydrogen ion difference, again, we've got this enzyme over here that is going to perform the chemiosmosis, or in other words, it's going to make ATP using the energy in the hydrogen concentration difference. And so that is happening. That's similar to what we had in the cyclic photophosphorylation. But the big difference that we have here is that water molecules, shown down here, they are going to be broken open to collect some electrons. And when they are broken open and the electrons are collected, we get this very important product of photosynthesis, which is oxygen. So the non-cyclic photophosphorylation is going to make some oxygen, which will go back to the atmosphere. It is going to make some ATP, which is important. And then we also have this electron carrier that is produced as well. That is going to be important for the second stage of photosynthesis as well. So these products, the ATP and the electron carrier, those are both going to be used for the Calvin cycle or the light independent reactions. So if we look at the light independent reactions, again, this is also called the Calvin cycle, so I'm just going to write that right here. The Calvin cycle, it is fairly complex, and you can see that here. But notice that we've got carbon dioxide, which is going into this. This is going to be kind of our raw ingredient that we're using from the atmosphere. And the cell is going to turn that into a carbohydrate or turn that into a sugar when it packs energy into it. To pack the energy in, we will need to use some ATP. And we will have ATP because they came from the light reactions that we just completed. So we will be utilizing ATP from the light reactions. We will also be utilizing the electrons and the electron carriers that we made before. And this is all in the end going to lead to the production of carbohydrates. So those carbohydrates have energy packed inside of them. That energy can be stored for later use. If later we need energy, then the cell can use the process of fermentation or the process of respiration to actually break them down and get the energy back out. When we're talking about photosynthesis and cellular respiration, these are pretty much opposite processes of each other. One of them is going to be making organic molecules, and one of them is going to be breaking organic molecules. Or another way to say it is that one of them is catabolic, one of them is anabolic. So one of them will be using and requiring ATP, one of them is going to be producing ATP. If we look at this, photosynthesis on the top, I'm just going to draw a line down the middle here. This is photosynthesis on the top. Notice that it requires energy, so that energy is in the form of light. That means that this is anabolic, and we can use the term endergonic because energy has to go into this to make it happen. We're also going to take our inorganic carbon, which is shown over here, and we will turn it into organic molecules which have a lot of energy stored inside of them. Then, if we look at the bottom half is going to produce energy. That is going to mean that it is exergonic. And at the same time, we are breaking the organic molecules. So since we are breaking them, this is going to be a catabolic process. So this is really what's happening inside of organisms on a regular basis. Some organisms, plants especially, are able to complete this whole circle, the whole cycle. Many other organisms, animals, humans, many microbes, most microbes would only be able to do the bottom half. So this is going to be the most common portion, the bottom portion. And again, the top part is going to be for unique, special organisms that can utilize that energy from the sun.